and welcome to Pin Drop Shop. I'm Jessica and today I'm going to show you how to sew half square triangles. Okay, so what is a half square triangle? These here are half square triangles. So the square, half of it is a triangle. So from two 3-inch squares we will get two of these half square triangles that measure 2.5 inches once we trim them down. Okay, so this is just kind of an easier way and more efficient way to create this. Instead of cutting a red triangle and a white triangle and sewing them together, we're going to create both of these from these two squares of fabric. So I'm going to show you how. So we have the white square, and we're just going to draw a line that goes from one corner to the other, and I'm using a roller to get a nice straight line. Okay, so then we're going to place this on top of the right side of the printed fabric. If you had two printed fabrics, you would put them right side together. And then we're going to go over to the sewing machine and we're going to stitch two lines on this. We're going to use one that's a 1/4 inch to the right of this line and one that's a 1/4 inch to the left of the line. So we're going to stitch here, we're going to stitch here, and we're going to cut, and when we open it up we'll have two of these. And then we'll trim it down to make it nicer. And you can use half square triangles and all kinds of different things. I'm using it to make this. I made a bunch of these blocks and it's got half square triangles in the corners here. And eventually it'll become this Corey Yoder droplets quilt. Okay, so we don't need to use pins or anything since this is so small, so we're just going to go over to the sewing machine and do those two lines of stitching I just talked about. Okay, so now you're going to want to find your 1/4 inch marking on your machine. On mine, on the presser foot right here, this line is 1/4 inch away from the needle, so you'll want to find that on your machine and line that right up with the line that you drew with a pencil, and lower your presser foot, and we're just going to sew all the way across that. For the other side. So lower down, lining up the 1/4 inch mark with the pencil line, and sew. Alright, perfect. So this is what it should look like. And now we're going to go over to the cutting mat and we're just going to cut right along that line, and you could also just use scissors. And for this part I don't even worry about being too precise. I don't even usually use a ruler. I just cut it. And it's not that big a deal if it's not precise, because the only thing you're going to mess up is the seam allowance, which it doesn't really matter if it's not a 1/4 inch. So then we're going to open these up, and look, we have our half square triangles. So now we will press the seam to the dark side, and then I'll show you how to trim them. Okay, so I pressed these, took them to the iron and pressed the seam allowance to the dark side. You always press to the darker fabric, because if not, if it's pressed to the white one, sometimes you can see it through there. So unless specified otherwise, just press it to the dark side. So I already trimmed these red ones we were working on, but I will show you how I trimmed them, because there's a couple tips. So here's some more. So you're going to line it up on this side and this side. There's these two triangle seam allowances that'll need to be chopped off, so I like to make it so one of them is getting chopped off in this step, so it needs to be to the right, unless of course you trim to the left of your roller if you're left-handed. So we're going to line up the left side and the bottom on the lines. straight. Like this one's a little bit slanted. If I line up the bottom one perfectly, this one, just a teeny bit of that goes over the line, and you want it to go, rather than this part being lined up and there being a space, you want to put it so that this is lined up and this extends past, so that way you can cut it off and make it straight. So line up the bottom. Okay, and then we're just gonna trim these to 2.5 because that's what the pattern says they need to be trimmed to. So just make sure it's at half here and up here. Trim. Okay, so it might be tempting to turn these this way so that the other triangle seam allowance gets cut off next, but you need to turn them 90 degrees the other way, counterclockwise in this case, because see how the diagonal seam is not going through the corner? We need it to go through the corner, so we need to take our trimming off this side so that it does go through the corner. And if we would cut from this side, we would have two sides where neither one goes through the corner. So you just want to pay attention to that when you're trimming these half square triangles. Okay. Oops. Alright, and now we'll go over to the other side and line up on the line. And if there's extra extending to the left of the line, we'll get it taken care of right now, and we'll get those seam allowances cut off. And you have a beautiful half square triangle, two of them. So we started with a white square and a colored square, and now we have two half square triangles out of it. Hope you try this and hope you enjoyed.